underway. The cars are making their way around to the grid now after the first race earlier on, which saw the championship lead change for the first time this year. We're getting into the business end of the season now, and Tom Jackson and James Dorlin's title battle takes on another dynamic, with Tom Jackson taking another race victory in the earlier race and James Dorlin only managing third place at the end. The cars lining up on the grid ahead of their second 25-minute race of the weekend, and we've got, of course, not only the pro cars up front but also the AM category a little bit further back, who also have their own championship battle in play, with Ambrogio Perfetti, the championship leader, taking another race victory in the earlier race. But the point situation is all very tight. The slightest of slip-ups for any of our championship contenders could spell complete disaster as far as their title campaigns are concerned. Andy McEwen here in the commentary box overlooking the start-finish line. If I look out of my window, I get a great view of these very, very good-looking Porsche Sprint Challenge Great Britain cars. They're Series 4 identical 718 Cayman GT4 Club Sport cars, and it's all part of Porsche's international racing programme for sort of aspiring sports and GT car drivers. The cars really do look the part. They've been brilliantly prepared by some of the top teams in the business, many of whom have been racing Porsches for decades. Teams like Into Racing, Redline Racing, for example. Rob Boston Racing, another top outfit, also involved. The Teams Championship being led by Into Racing, by the way, coming into this weekend, and that I don't think has changed after the race earlier on today. So the field is headed by, at the front of the field, some of the usual suspects really. It's Tom Jackson that won the earlier race, like I said, and he will therefore have pole position. The grid for race 2 is based on the result from the first race, and so Tom Jackson is at the head of the field with Archie Hamilton alongside. Here is that grid in full as they make their way off onto their green flag lap. Then Jackson on pole, looking to try and take another race victory. His one earlier on was his third of the year and gave him the championship lead. James Dorlin, his championship rival, in third place with Theo Edgerton fourth, but Dorlin didn't get a great start in the first race. Ethan Hawkey is fifth, ahead of Ambrogio Perfetti, who is the highest placed AM driver on the grid for this one, and he is also the championship leader in AM after another class victory earlier on today. Sarah Moore makes a welcome debut in the championship. She's seventh on the grid, ahead of Nigel Rice, the second of the AM drivers in the race, but only third in the AM championship coming into this weekend, so he could do with maybe challenging Perfetti for a race win here if he can. Then on the fifth row of the grid, right behind them, we have got Ian Humphries and Mike Price. We're getting into the AM field now. The rest of the field, the rest of the cars on the grid, all AM drivers. Followed by then Pete Chambers and Chris Carr on the sixth row of the grid. The Redline Racing car of Chris Carr rounding out the top dozen. And then at the back of the grid, Carl Cavers and John Westbrook, who was our one non-finisher from the early race. He had a spectacular spin at the Fogarty S's and clouted the barriers. I don't think too much damage was done there, so I'm hoping that the number 66 car of John Westbrook, the white and green car, is there at the back of the field and kind of peering towards the back of the shot to try and see if I can see him. Yes, there he is, John Westbrook, white, green and black car. Number 66 is there with barely a scratch on it, so the recticel barriers did their job in the chicane, and the 66 car is indeed going to be taking the start. So points-wise, then you score 20 points for a race, 10 points for a race victory and 8 for second. So the championship lead now belongs to James Dorlin by 2 points. He outscored Tom Jackson by 4 points in the previous race, and he was 2 points behind going into it. So Jackson has a very slender lead, but if Dorlin can beat Jackson by more than one position in this race, he should get the championship lead back again. So it's going to be an important race this for James Dorlin, who was race winner in the British GT4 Championship last year, of course, for Tolman Motorsport in their McLaren. Now at the wheel of one of these 3.8 litre, 425 brake horsepower Porsche Cayman GT4 Club Sport cars. A 6-cylinder boxer engine, which is of course centrally mounted in these cars rather than the traditional rear-engined design of most Porsches. You can get one of these cars from around about £130,000, which sounds like a lot of money, but you're getting a lot of car for your money, and when you compare it to other similar championships out there, it is pretty good value actually. It's the fourth meeting of the year. They will be racing at Croft on the BTCC package on the 10th and 11th of October before coming back to the British GT bill at Silverstone for the championship decider. So, field is more or less assembled. The back row of the grid just coming into place. Tom Jackson and Archie Hamilton on the front row of the grid, and James Dorlin in third. The two title contenders are the first two cars on the left-hand side of your shot. The white and orange and black car is Jackson. The silver and green is James Dorlin. Revs starting to rise then. They watch the lights which go out. Now, away they go. Good start made by the pole sitter. Not a great start by Archie Hamilton, though, so James Dorlin might be able to challenge for second place here into the first corner. He's got his nose on the inside line. Dorlin is late on the brakes. Former Renault Clio Cup front runner, of course, James Dorlin, so he knows all about hard, close racing, and he's already engaging in some of that as they go out of the first corner. Dorlin looks as though he's got the momentum. He's got the inside line through Hollywood, and he does go second. That was crucial, so it is going to be Jackson that leads the way. It's Dorlin second. Oh, it's Archie Hamilton third, but that looked like Theo Edgerton was trying to get to the inside of him there into the old hairpin, no way through. Then it's Ethan Hawkey in fifth with Ambrogio Perfetti still leading in the AM category behind. Up the hill into the right-hander at McLean's corner then, and Archie Hamilton driving defensively already, trying not to allow Theo Edgerton through, but Edgerton has got him on the ropes here, so to speak. James Dorlin, meanwhile, has already caught the race leader Tom Jackson. There's almost contact between the two of them as they go through Coppice Corner. James Dorlin has clearly made some setup changes to that car because he did not have this pace or aggression in race one, and he is going to make Tom Jackson's life very, very difficult here in the second race of the weekend. Through the chicane they go. Dorlin with the better line, might be able to carry more speed down towards Melbourne hairpin. Let's see what happens as they crest the hill down into the hairpin. They are side by side. Jackson on the inside line, Dorlin on the outside, trying to tee up a better exit, but Jackson saw that coming and just sort of parked the car on the apex of the corner, just delayed the momentum from the car behind, which was flashing its lights, I think, there. James Dorlin up the hill. Jackson on the defence here then, doesn't seem to quite have the speed to race away with it, a bit like he did in race one. Tom Jackson won the opening race of the day by 2.8 seconds over Archie Hamilton, but he was about 3.5, 4 seconds ahead of Hamilton at one point. Archie kind of came back to him in the middle portion of the race. In the AM category, it is Perfetti that leads the way. It's Nigel Rice second, and Ian Humphries third, with Sarah Moore in between them, but she is a pro driver. Down into the old hairpin then. James Dorlin, having had that initial burst of attack and trying to get away past Tom Jackson, is he now going to settle in? It doesn't look like it. He's taking a very aggressive line through Starkey's. He's right on the rear bumper of the number 10 car into McLean's. Jackson cannot put a foot wrong here. If he makes the slightest mistake, Dorlin will be through. He's got him defending again into Coppice. This is the worst corner to defend at because it's over a crest. You tend to understeer wide anyway, and Jackson somehow covered that off, but James Dorlin was tapping Morse code onto the back bumper of the race-leading car then. James Dorlin knows he's quicker. He also knows that he can't really afford to wait too long because it's now Theo Edgerton into third, ahead of Archie Hamilton. Didn't quite catch how that happened, but the number 18 car loses a spot and could lose another now to Ethan Hawkey. Dorlin this time not quite alongside Jackson into the hairpin, but Jackson still felt the need to defend, so he is going to be slower off the corner than the second place car. And they're definitely being caught by Theo Edgerton here. Edgerton looking for his first victory in the championship. He's had a few podiums this year, but if he maybe takes advantage of the championship protagonists getting a bit preoccupied with each other, he could maybe pick his way through all of this and end up with a race victory. So, into Redgate Corner and onto the third lap of the race. Fastest lap set by Theo Edgerton, so no doubt about it, he's quicker than the cars in front. And now this is exactly what Tom Jackson needed, because James Dorlin is now having to watch his mirrors, having to defend from Edgerton in third. This is something we see time and time and time again out there on the racetrack. As soon as you have a third car in the mix, it completely changes the dynamic of the battle, and it allows the lead car sometimes to be able to push away slightly. And that's exactly what Jackson's doing. In the first sector, he is a tenth quicker than Dorlin. The gap was already up to half a second at the start of the lap, which was the biggest it had been so far. Middle sector time about to come through as Archie Hamilton and Ethan Hawkey there continue to scrap over fourth place. And in the middle sector, well, Dorlin is actually fractionally quicker than Jackson in the middle sector, so the gap comes back down again to about half a second. So matching each other really. Dorlin just needs to get his head down here. Fastest first sector of anyone actually set by Ethan Hawkey in fifth position. So Hawkey there, the white and orange car, number 40, is keen to get past Archie Hamilton here, who for whatever reason doesn't seem that strong at the start of the races, but he really came on strong through the middle portion of race 1. So again, I wonder if that's a setup choice that the team have made to have the car come on strong later on, look after the tyres a bit. Across the line they go, fastest lap set by Tom Jackson, 135.619, despite not having the fastest sector times. He was not fastest in any one of the 3 sectors that time, but over the course of a whole lap, he was quick enough to pull out a little bit of a lead, so he's nearly 3/4 of a second now up on the second place car, James Dorlin, with Edgerton now definitely making a nuisance of himself in 3rd position. You see in the background there, the AM category, Nigel Rice is up for the fight this time. Ambrogio Perfetti has not been able to escape with the pros like he did in the first part of race 1, and so Nigel Rice is only 1.25 seconds behind him in the 6th and 7th places overall, as here comes Hawkey up the inside of Archie Hamilton for 4th place, and he's going to go through at Coppice Corner. Nothing really that Hamilton could do to defend from that one. Hawkey just that little bit quicker, and now we'll look to try and bridge that gap, but that gap to the top 3 is going to be the best part of 2 seconds now, I reckon. Maybe more, actually, as they come through the chicane. So Ethan Hawkey, work to be done now. Down into there, we can hear the ABS there working hard to stop the cars. Quite a bumpy and very steeply downhill braking point that is into the Melbourne hairpin. So easy to lock up and run wide. There goes Archie Hamilton, so having dropped down to 5th place, what he really needs to try and do now is tag on to the back of Ethan Hawkey, chase after those top 3, but it's not really going his way at the moment. The starting point for Hawkey, by the way, 2.5 seconds, the gap between himself and Theo Edgerton in 3rd. There goes the AM battle with Sarah Moore also a part of it, and then Nigel Rice with Carl Chambers. John Westbrook, who had that off in race 1, by the way, he's gained 1 place at the expense of Chris Carr, although yes, and he's trying to gain another one now. Carl Cavers is the man in front, the number 22 car, the Beluga run machine. Leading trio, pretty equidistantly spaced out now as they go through McLean's. 135.596 for Jackson, the race leader, new fastest lap of the race. And as a result, he's 8/10 clear of Dorlin now. If Dorlin were to win the race with Jackson 2nd, they'd end up pretty much level on points. Here's a replay of the start, and Hamilton there, the black and gold car on the outside line, just didn't get a good getaway really. Dorlin got to the inside, he wasn't fully alongside, but he just sent it into the braking zone and was late on the brakes, and then kind of muscled his way through on the exit of the corner. And then going down the Crater curves, had to fend off Theo Edgerton. He would get through fairly quickly after that, but Theo Edgerton was able to get into 3rd and then immediately chase down the top 2. See there, he was all over the back of Archie Hamilton through the first few corners, and now look, the gap between 2nd and 3rd is significantly less than the one between 1st and 2nd. The lead gap is over a second now for the first time. From 2nd to 3rd is only 3.5 tenths, but the fastest car on the track now is Ethan Hawkey in 4th place. He's 2.3 seconds behind these two, but he just set the fastest lap of the race. He was about 2.5 tenths quicker than Dorlin in 2nd place. So it's definitely the 4th place car that we need to watch for. There he goes, look, Ethan Hawkey through the old hairpin and setting off after Dorlin and Edgerton. Trouble is, of course, he might have left himself a bit too much work to do, really, because as I said, that starting point is about 2.5 seconds, so that is a lot. With 16 minutes left on the clock, it's doable, but by the time you get there, will you have A, any time left to do anything about the cars in front of you, and B, will you have any tyre grip left, because you're going to have to use up your tyres just to catch up to the cars in front. Hawkey on this lap in the first sector is faster than anybody. He is 2 tenths quicker than Edgerton in the first sector. In the middle sector he's another 2 tenths quicker. So on that basis he can absolutely get there. And look at the way he's pulled away from Hamilton. Only a lap and a half since he overtook him, and he's now 1.7 seconds ahead. So Archie Hamilton definitely not capable of that sort of speed. Nigel Rice, by the way, in the AM category, still only 1.2 seconds behind Ambrogio Perfetti, with Sarah Moore right behind him. Again, I'll make the point Sarah is a pro driver, but in her first appearance in that car, she's just struggling a little bit, I think, to get properly up to speed. There you can see the AM cars coming towards us. So the black and red Chupa Chups car is the class leader, Ambrogio Perfetti. Won the first race, he did the double at Snetterton at the start of the year, but didn't finish either race at Brands Hatch last time out. That's the only reason, really, that the championship has ended up as tight as it has between he and Ian Humphries, and indeed Pete Chambers, who was only a point behind Humphries coming into this weekend. Of course, Humphries beat him in the previous race, beat Chambers, that is. Leader again sets the fastest lap. Tom Jackson getting quicker and quicker now, 135.349. So it was really important that he weathered that storm in the first part of the race and kept James Dorlin behind him, because Dorlin, had he got through, would probably then have not been as quick as Jackson. This lap, though, Dorlin is a tenth quicker than the leader in sectors 1 and 2. In fact, a tenth and a half quicker in sector 2. So is this Dorlin coming back at him? We've seen this in the past this year. James Dorlin a bit quicker maybe in the middle part of the race, possibly setting the car up again to have a little bit more long-term speed. I reckon the gap is going to come down this time, isn't it? It was 1.6 seconds, Jackson's Dorlin at the start of the lap. Dorlin is bringing Edgerton with him, but he's not dropping him. And of course, Ethan Hawke is continuing to lap quicker than those two in fourth place. Across the line goes Jackson, 135.79, and actually Dorlin is half a tenth slower in the end, despite being quicker in the first two sectors. So it's that final sector where he's struggling, really. Fastest of the leading quartet that time was, again, Ethan Hawke. He's only 1.4 seconds behind Edgerton now. There is Nigel Rice, second in the AM category. Sarah Moore in the car that Alex Toth-Jones took to a fourth and a sixth place finish here earlier in the year. And Alex got his best result of the year, actually, here at Donington. Well, in fact, he's had two fourth places. He had a fourth at Brands Hatch last time, but has handed the car over to Sarah Moore. Not able to race this weekend, Alex. And Sarah enjoying her fighting here, I'm sure, with the AM drivers, but she'd rather be up there amongst the pros with whom she has been classified. To Coppice Corner. Ooh, Moore has a look. Not close enough, though. What about the exit, though? Gets a tighter line there than Nigel Rice, but just can't quite nose her way alongside. And all the time, Ian Humphries is not far behind either. Sarah Moore looking to the inside line at the chicane. Nigel Rice is later on the brakes. Was he too late? A little bit. Ran a bit deep there, so Sarah Moore does get the better exit from the corner. And this time, I think she will probably go through. She's got the inside for the Melbourne hairpin. And Sarah Moore does take the place, and Ian Humphries is going to try and get past the pair of them. Fantastic move from Ian Humphries. He read that situation spot on, and wouldn't it be adding insult to injury now if Nigel Rice were able to get back ahead of Sarah Moore after all of that? She did the hard work, she opened the door, and it's Ian Humphries that has reaped the rewards. She does at least keep Nigel Rice behind, but she is still only in 8th place overall and still stuck behind one of the AM drivers. In fact, she's having to defend now from Nigel as they go down into Redgate Corner again. Does Nigel have a dive at the inside? No. Decided that discretion was the better part of valour, and that it was maybe better to work with Sarah Moore to try and catch back up to Ian Humphries. That was a fantastic move from Ian. Thought at first he was just going to try and follow Sarah Moore through ahead of Nigel Rice, but he was that late on the brakes, and Sarah had left a gap on the inside invitingly. So Ian Humphries was able to make that move work. The head of the field, by the way, top four cars now are covered by just 2.8 seconds. Jackson, the leader, 1.1 ahead of James Dorlin, who is 0.8 ahead of Edgerton, and now Edgerton is less than a second ahead of Ethan Hawke, who's just set the fastest lap. There you can see that gap, it's virtually nothing now. So Ethan Hawke has caught the third place man with 11 minutes to go. He's got time here, hasn't he, Ethan? If he dispatches of Edgerton quickly, he's definitely got the potential to challenge Dorlin. I don't know whether he's got time to get to Jackson as well, but he is the fastest car out there, and on the previous lap was 8 tenths quicker than the race leader, so okay, it wasn't a great lap for Jackson, but it was a particularly good one for Ethan Hawke. And what we've seen, really, is that these Michelin tyres don't seem to give up that much over a race distance, so you'd expect him to be able to keep this pace up to the flag. Across the line he goes then, does a 1:35.5, still quicker than everyone in front of him, but only a tenth faster than the lead at that time. Back out of Redgate. Oh, Hawkey just drops off the edge of the curb there. So Theo Edgerton can breathe a sigh of relief for the time being, because as they race down into the old hairpin, Hawkey is not going to be close enough here to attack, or is he? Well, he got a good run out of the old hairpin actually, so although Edgerton didn't need to defend on the way in, he does now have to start watching the mirrors into McLean's corner, which is a viable overtaking opportunity, most definitely. See some good overtaking there over the years, and indeed throughout the day here at Donington. Battle for third place then. Theo Edgerton, Ethan Hawkey. Edgerton has got 3 podiums to his credit so far this year. Ethan Hawkey, just the one. Edgerton, therefore, is the one that's further ahead in the championship, but not by a massive amount, actually, because he's had a couple of slightly less than ideal results. Missed out on the podium, of course, in this morning's race. He will not want to do so again. Sliding out of the Melbourne hairpin, maybe those rear tyres are just starting to go past their best. But he's defending well from the number 40 car behind him. AM lead gap, by the way, is now 2.7 seconds. So yeah, Ambrogio Perfetti seems to have the AM lead in hand. There he goes out of the final corner. Although Ian Humphries might have caught him on this lap, let's see. Yeah, Ian Humphries with the personal best lap was half a second quicker than the AM class lead at that time. Archie Hamilton there having a lonely drive to 5th place, which is odd because he was second in race 1. Maybe he took too much out of the tyres in that one, and maybe just didn't have a particularly fresh set to bolt on for race number 2, I don't know, but he's certainly not as quick now as he was earlier on today. Back to this crate battle here between Ian Humphries, Sarah Moore and Nigel Rice, although they have spread out a bit more now. It's Ian Humphries' lap times that I'm interested in. He's quicker again by a full half a second quicker than Ambrogio Perfetti in race number 1. Now, last time we were here at Donington Park, Perfetti won the first race by a country mile in the AM class, and then only managed 4th in race 2. So it might well be that some drivers are just better earlier in the day when they've got fresh tyres and a fresh car and a fresh mind. And maybe as they get towards the end of the day, they seem to struggle, because Perfetti is definitely not as quick now again, a bit like Archie Hamilton in the Pro Class, not as quick as they were in race number 1. There's the number 3 of Mike Price turning through the chicane. He is running currently in 4th place in the AM category. Pete Chambers is 5th, just behind him. The overall lead battle, though, definitely seems to have just stagnated a bit now. It doesn't look like Hawkey can do anything immediately about Theo Edgerton, and with only 7 minutes left on the clock now, I think his chances of challenging for much more than 3rd place are pretty much over. In the AM class, though, yeah, Humphries, he's definitely going to catch Perfetti. He was another half a second quicker that time with another personal best lap. 1.6 is the gap now between the top 2 in AM. That is maybe not where the battle is right now, but within a lap or so, I think it probably will be. There is Ethan Hawkey, number 40 car, heads out of McLean's towards the top of the circuit now through the tricky right-hander, that never-ending right-hander really, at Coppice Corner. He's closing back in now on Theo Edgerton as well, so this might not be over yet. Maybe he was just dropping back, cool off the tyres, cool off the brakes, and sort of arrive with a bit more momentum rather than just sitting on the rear bumper of the car in front. Very close going through the hairpin, but he wasn't actually close enough to challenge on that occasion. So into the next lap they go, into the closing stages now really, just under 6 minutes to go. And across the line go Ethan Hawkey and Theo Edgerton. This battle, they've been locked in really since the start of the race. Theo Edgerton is the 16-year-old. It's a sign of my age, I think, now that starts to irritate me more and more when I see such successful and talented youngsters coming into the sport. Do rather feel like I missed my opportunity. But 16-year-old running for TCR, and raced in the Ginetta Junior Championship last year with one podium to his credit. In fact, the last couple of years he's raced in Ginetta Juniors and had a little bit of karting experience before he came into this championship, but not a huge amount really. Ethan Hawkey right behind him, 18 years of age, another driver who's had one Ginetta Junior podium. So these two have had almost identical careers really. Karting, a couple of seasons of Ginetta Juniors, one podium each. It's just that Ethan Hawkey is a couple of years older. But, Ethan is, I think, a little bit quicker than Theo at the moment, just struggling to prise that door open, and he is now starting to run out of time, and as the time continues to tick down, the frustration starts to ratchet up and up and up, because he's been following that car for a long time now, about 20 minutes or so, not been able to get through. In AM, by the way, Ian Humphries 1.3 seconds behind Ambrogio Perfetti, only took about 3/10 out of him on the previous lap, and that still is a good he's still got a good chance of catching him before the end, I think. Sarah Moore also just set her personal best lap time behind, but wasn't quite as quick as Humphries ahead of her. Still the fastest lap belongs to Ethan Hawkey as well, so 1:35.344. It's only 5 1/1000ths of a second quicker than Tom Jackson's managed to do. 5 1/1000ths, I suppose, is all it takes. Drops down through the old hairpin again. Edgerton defending this third position very nicely. But for how much longer can he do so? 3.5 minutes to go. Now, we got, in the first race of the day, we got 16 laps in, and I don't recall there being a safety car, so we should be aiming for a similar amount here on the 14th lap now, so 2 laps to go then, I reckon, at the end of this one. James Dorlin's still not really escaped from these two, has he? He's 1.3 seconds ahead, but he's not getting any further away. In fact, he was fractionally slower than these two on the previous lap as they spur each other on. Hatch again is where Hawkey really seems to be strong, but he's almost getting too close to Edgerton. He can't really carry the momentum through the corner. Has a look to the inside. Edgerton saw that one coming a mile off. Jumped to the inside to cover. And as they go back towards the end of yet another lap, they will start their penultimate lap this time. But you can see Hawkey, he's almost pushing him now through the hairpin. And at some point, Hawkey is going to have a real concerted effort at getting past Edgerton here. He's shown his nose a couple of times. He's weaved around a bit in his mirrors. He's applied the pressure, but not really made a lunge for it. And you sense it's going to have to be a lunge. He's not going to be able to just drive alongside and go through. But that is, again, going to be not the easiest things to do, because Theo Edgerton has proven himself to be a solid driver and doesn't make that many mistakes either. So, and I think he knows he's not going to catch James Dorling now, so all of Edgerton's attention now is focused on defending from that car behind. He doesn't really care about what's going on in front of him. He just wants to try and find a way through. Now, in the AM category, Ambrogio Perfetti and Ian Humphries, I think, were side by side as they started this lap for the class lead. Only 86 1/1000ths of a second separating Perfetti and Humphries. So in the first sector, Perfetti was quicker, so I think he's held on, but Ian Humphries has now caught the class leader, so that might be worth checking in on over this last lap and a half or so if we can. Race leader Tom Jackson heads through the Melbourne hairpin. Into the final corner again. Is Hawkey going to have a go here into Goddard? No, it's just so frustrating. He's so close to Theo Edgerton. There is the AM battle, and this is how close it's getting. Ambrogio Perfetti running wide there through the Melbourne hairpin. And Ian Humphries sensing blood in the water now. One more lap to go for these two. Ian Humphries has one class victory to his credit, which was at Brands Hatch last time out. Raced in the Britcar Endurance Championship last year, winning one race actually, racing 4 for Luger Racing. And the 45-year-old from Birmingham, this his local circuit then essentially, he would love to get himself onto the top step of the podium. But he's only got limited chances to do this. He probably only realistically has one more shot. If he has a go and it doesn't work, I don't think he's going to have time to come back at Perfetti. It's down through the crane as they go. And at the front of the field, third place, Ethan Hawkey still can't get past Theo Edgerton. Battles over the curb there through Coppice Corner. Again, a bit like in the AM battle, only one or two more places you can try and overtake. You can go through into the chicane, but it's more sensible to try and focus on that exit, and that's where Hawkey's been quick. I reckon he's going to have a big go here, Ethan Hawkey, at carrying the speed off the chicane, take lots of curb, get the foot down as quickly as possible, and maybe force your way through on the inside. This is probably the last chance he's got. Can he get to the inside line? He tries, but the line is covered. Theo Edgerton moved across just when he saw that that move was being attempted, and he is able to hang on to the place. It's going to be, though, a double race victory for Tom Jackson. The first time he's done this. It's his fourth win of the year. The first time, though, that he's gone back-to-back. A brilliant weekend for Tom Jackson to extend the championship margin over James Doyle in second, Theo Edgerton third, and Ethan Hawkey fourth, with Archie Hamilton fifth. Who is going to win in the AM category? That's the next question. Ambrogio Perfetti and Ian Humphries were together pretty much going on to the final lap, waiting for them to come through across the start-finish line. This is Pete Chambers and Mike Price. There is Ambrogio Perfetti. He is going to hang on. So Perfetti wins the AM category, Ian Humphries second, and Sarah Moore comes through next in eighth place. And then this little battle between Chambers, Chambers and Price is going to see a change on the last lap. Actually, that's for fourth place in AM. So Pete Chambers gets himself ahead of Michael Price and takes fourth place in the AM class. Got him at the chicane, I'm hearing, so that we caught the back end of that move down into the Melbourne hairpin. So Tom Jackson then wins the eighth round, of the Cayman Islands Porsche Spring Challenge Great Britain. And after a win in race one, it's a slightly more comfortable win, honestly, in race two, although he definitely had his work cut out over the first 2 or 3 laps to keep James Doyle in at bay. Here is your result then from race 2 at Donington Park. Tom Jackson the winner, James Doyle in second, and Theo Edgerton rounds out the podium. It was fourth for Ethan Hawkey, and Archie Hamilton a lowly fifth. Ambrogio Perfetti gets a double victory in the AM class to further cement his position as the championship leader, with Ian Humphries in second place. Gave it all he had, but not quite enough time to really attack and overtake Ambrogio at the end. Sarah Moore was 8th, the last of the pro runners home. Then it was Nigel Rice who gets himself another AM podium, ahead of Pete Chambers, Mike Price, Chris Carr, John Westbrook, and Carl Cavers rounding out the 14 runners. So good racing from the Cayman Islands Porsche Sprint Challenge Great Britain competitors, and as I said, they will be back in action in October at Croft, and you'll be able to watch the British Touring Car live coverage to see their races there, but then they'll be back with British GT for their championship decider at Silverstone, and it looks set to be a really interesting battle, this, between Jackson and Dorlin for the title. Not really a huge amount to choose between them pace-wise, and they've been sharing the wins pretty equally now. They both have 4 race victories, but Jackson has more podium finishes. That's what's doing it, and it's more consistent podium finishes anyway. Here are the highlights then of race number 2. Good start made by Jackson from pole position. Archie Hamilton didn't get a bad start. It just wasn't quite as good as James Dorlin, who was able to launch his way to the inside at Redgate, and after a little bit of paint was traded, moved through into second position. Hamilton dropped in line in third, just ahead of Theo Edgerton and Ethan Hawkey, and that was to be the battle in the early stages of the race, whilst James Dorlin set off after the race leader, Tom Jackson. There was a spin coming out of the hairpin for one of the AM runners. That was Chris Carr in the 33 car. He had a rotation, whilst Nigel Rice and Sarah Moore enjoyed a really entertaining scrap. Sarah Moore was trying to find a way past the second-placed AM driver. She succeeded in doing so, and then rather left the door open for Ian Humphries in the number 27 car to come through. And Ian Humphries in the Voluga car was able to get second in the class. John Westbrook didn't hit the barriers this time, but he did have a scary moment at the old hairpin when he bounced across the grass. Did well to save the car. Chris Carr was then overtaken by John Westbrook by the narrowest of margins, getting very close and personal going through the Melbourne hairpin. The checkered flag, though, came out at the end of the race for the second time this weekend for Tom Jackson, a very, very commanding performance here at Donington Park. He is now a few points ahead of James Dorling going into the penultimate event of the season, just 4 races to go. Whilst in the AM category, it was Ambrogio Perfetti who took the one despite the late efforts from Ian Humphries to try and close in on him. He ended up coming home second, with Nigel Rice in third. Well, that is it for the Cayman Islands Porsche Sprint Challenge Great Britain here from Donington Park. As I said, they'll be back in action at Croft in October. Thank you for joining us, though. Hope you've enjoyed the racing from the Porsche Sprint Challenge here at Donington, and we'll see you again next time.